Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a long, hard look at asymmetry, these hidden imbalances of power, influence, and even suffering that really define so much of modern life. We've got two pretty profound dives planned for you. The first one starts with what might be the strangest moral quest in the developed world. And that's the U.S. state's paradoxical and, honestly, often macabre search for a truly humane way to execute people.
It's an extraordinary journey. And what's amazing is that the fundamental debate in America isn't really whether the state should take a life.
Right, the morality question gets sidelined.
Completely. Instead, all the energy of the judicial system is focused on the mechanism. The real goal is finding a method of execution that is acceptable to the public.
A form that is, and this is a wild phrase, the easiest to watch.
Exactly.
That shift from cruelty to disappearance is what makes this whole history so bizarre. I mean, the story of the death penalty in America is this relentless progression of methods.
Each one sold with the promise of being more humane.
Right. We went from public hangings to the firing squad, which was seen as, cleaner. Then came the electric chair.
And the electric chair, you have to remember, at the time, it was considered this great progressive technological innovation. It was supposed to be faster, less brutal than hanging.
But the reality.
The reality, which lasted until well into the 1970s, was horrific. I mean, we're talking about eyewitness accounts of bodies twitching violently, smoke rising from people's heads,
Thighs popping.
brains literally being fried. The goal of a clean, swift justice was just. It was totally perturbed by the physical reality. It was anything but easy to watch.
Okay, so enter lethal injection. This was designed to solve the optics problem for good.
Yes. The idea was to medicalize the entire process, make it look calm, sterile, clinical.
The thinking was, we can put people down the same way we put down a beloved pet or horse, calmly and humanely.
It was all about giving the state and the public plausible deniability of any cruelty.
And this is where the asymmetry of justice gets really, really disturbing. For decades, we all sort of believed this sterile narrative.
We did. And then this incredibly sharp anesthesiologist, a guy named Joel Zivit, he started investigating the clinical effects of the standard 3-drug cocktail.
Okay, so that's the sedative, the paralytic, and then the drug that stops the heart.
Right. And the sedative, that first drug, is supposed to make the person just drift off painlessly.
That's the intent.
That is the intent. But Zivit's findings revealed a really devastating chemical reality. When that high dose of sedative, usually a barbiturate, is injected, it dramatically alters the blood's pH.
It's acidity.
It's acidity. It's a toxic change. And before the person can even fully lose consciousness, that chemical reaction causes their lungs, their internal organs, to feel like they're burning up. They're essentially dying in exquisite agony.
Wait, if their lungs are on fire, that sounds like massive, excruciating pain. But witnesses, they just see a body lying still on the gurney. It looks serene. How do you explain that gap?
Well, that is the ultimate macabre paradox. The second drug they administer is the paralytic. It stops all muscle movement. So the person is suffering intensely, experiencing their organs burning. But that paralytic makes it utterly impossible for them to cry out, to twitch, to show any outward sign of distress.
Oh, and Brock.
They are, to use a really chilling phrase, silently screaming as they die. The mechanism was designed, whether intentionally or not, to prioritize the public's peace of mind over the actual experience of the person being executed.
So the state ensures the person dies in agony, but also ensures no one knows it. If Zivit's findings are accepted, how can any state legally keep using that method?
Well, it forces them to keep moving the goalposts. Once the reality of lethal injection started to come out, we saw the immediate next step.
Which was?
The push toward nitrogen gas asphyxiation, which has been described as the newest attempt to find a humane mechanism. It's like the iPhone 17 Pro Max of executions, always looking for the next tech solution to the same moral problem.
And this just highlights the really strange exceptionalism of the U.S. and the developed world. France stopped using the guillotine, which, by the way, was once seen as a great progressive innovation, fast and clean back in the 1980s.
Right. And yet the U.S. persists, sometimes even circling back. Utah recently brought back the firing squad.
The focus is on finding the right tool while everyone else has put the toolbox your way.
Exactly. It's all about managing the spectacle.
Okay, so let's unpack this and move to our second dive. The pervasive asymmetry of influence. This is where optics also rule, but this time it's over the spread of ideas, public health crises, even crime.
What's crucial to understand here is how this whole concept has evolved. 25 years ago, the idea that you could model the spread of ideas like an epidemic That was groundbreaking.
Like in the book, The Tipping Point.
Exactly. It was a novel idea, but now that language is totally commonplace. Everything's viral, everything's contagious. We've all internalized the epidemic as a model for social change.
And the key principle behind all of this is the 5% rule. The idea that in almost any system, social or biological, the overwhelming majority of the work is done by a tiny, tiny fraction of the population.
That's it. It's a stark imbalance.
Yeah.
In biology, take an infectious disease like COVID, it turns out roughly only 5% of the infected population is truly responsible for spreading it.
The super spreader.
The super spreaders. That small group might be 100 or even 1,000 times more likely to pass it on than everyone else who's sick.
Okay, so if we apply that same massive imbalance to social influence, like spreading the idea that, say, Taylor Swift is a great singer.
It means the messenger's connectivity and trust is everything. You have 100 people who hold that opinion, maybe only 4 or 5 are actually doing the heavy lifting of moving that idea into new social circles.
Their opinion is consequential.
It's consequential because of their position in the network. Meanwhile, other people's opinions, like your beloved grandmother in a nursing home who loves the music, it's sincere, but it has zero consequential impact on that cultural trend.
And technology, it seems to have just dramatically amplified the power of those few super spreaders.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it like travel. In the 19th century, a disease spread slowly, right, at the speed of a passenger ship. The invention of jet travel was a technological intervention that just supercharged that asymmetrical process.
Yeah.
The few people who travel constantly became incredibly effective super spreaders.
And the digital age does the same for ideas.
Precisely. It doesn't create the asymmetry, but it turbocharges it.
Yeah.
It makes those super spreaders way, way more powerful.
And here's where it shifts from just a theory to something actionable. The fact that technology now gives us what the source material calls the transparency of asymmetry.
Right.
It's not just that things are asymmetrical, it's that we can now see where the influence or the contagion actually lies.
And that transparency is fundamentally changing how we approach problems. I mean, you can use this for good. Take crime fighting. Criminologists can now model criminal behavior, which is highly asymmetrical, and identify the specific hotspots.
So they can tell law enforcement, look, it's these 15 or 20 city blocks that are responsible for 50% of the city's crime.
And you can target your resources there. A great public health example is the anti-mosquito spraying program in Florida.
Oh, right.
They used to spray entire counties, just vast amounts of pesticide. Waste of time, resources, bad for the environment.
And now?
Now they use drones to identify and target only the highly asymmetrical swarms of mosquitoes. You fight the epidemic at its source because you know exactly where to look.
But this transparency can also be used for something much darker, and the opioid crisis is maybe the most chilling example.
It was a conscious, dark marketing innovation.
An act of strategic exploitation. Purdue Pharma, when they launched Oxycontin, they realized the sales followed this exact 5% rule. The overwhelming majority of doctors were cautious. They knew the dangers of prescribing powerful narcotics. They were the non-spreaders.
But a tiny fraction wasn't cautious, and they were the key. They were the key. Purdue got access to these comprehensive databases that tracked the prescribing habits of virtually every doctor in America. Their big innovation wasn't the drug, it was the ruthless exploitation of that data.
So they found the super spreaders.
They precisely identified and targeted that tiny fraction, only about 2,000 doctors out of hundreds of thousands, who were willing to overprescribe dangerous narcotics without much concern.
So they ignored all the cautious doctors, saved their marketing budget, and just poured all their resources, sales reps, fancy dinners, junkets, into cultivating those 2,000 prescribers.
That was the entire strategy. It was surgical. Everyone else thought you had to market to everyone. Purdue realized you only needed to activate the 1 or 2% who would do all the consequential work.
And that ruthless focus on exploiting the asymmetry among doctors
Is presented as the foundational cause of the 25-year-long crisis, which tragically spiraled from prescription pills to heroin and ultimately to fentanyl.
Wow, that is profound. Let's shift our focus now to how these asymmetries show up in our own lives, in our psychology, especially how we assign blame. Which brings us to a fascinating concept called the region beta paradox.
This is a wild concept. It describes a kind of psychological stasis, like being stuck in the middle. The region beta paradox is when you're in a situation that is, well, not bad enough to be bad, but also not good enough to be good.
Give me an example. What does that look like?
It could be a rental where the rent's a little too high, the apartment is just mediocre, or a relationship with, low-level cheating or just constant low-grade dissatisfaction.
And the paradox is,
The paradox is that you'd actually be better off if the situation were worse. If the rent doubled or the cheating became overt because that crisis would force you to make a beneficial, though painful, escape, the mediocrity holds you hostage.
it's just comfortable enough to avoid the trauma of leaving.
Exactly. Inertia is incredibly powerful.
And speaking of blame, let's talk about the parental attribution error. We are all so quick to blame our parents for our neuroses, our fears, our shortcomings. But there's a huge asymmetry in how we assign credit versus blame.
How do you see that playing out?
We externalize all the bad and we internalize all the good. If you have intense anxiety or fear of failure, you're quick to blame your parents for being too strict or too critical.
Hmm.
But the moment you achieve success, your ambition, your discipline, your drive, you claim that as mine alone. We're so quick to blame our upbringing, but so slow to admit that the very same pressures that created our fear of failure also forged our meticulousness.
And if we add another layer to that, we see what could be called the asymmetrical parental attribution error. Psychologically, we usually only reference and blame one parent at a time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. For a few years, you blame your mom. Then you flip, and you focus entirely on your dad. It's almost like the mind has to collapse the complexity of two interacting people down to a single villain.
And we miss the fundamental way that the interaction between them, the environment they created together, is what actually shaped us.
Precisely. It's never the dynamic between them. It's always one or the other. We miss the system they created.
This whole issue of who gets a head start brings us back to systemic asymmetry. The sources highlighted how wealth and class can dramatically influence success in certain areas.
That's the key difference between what we could call class-weighted endeavors and truly egalitarian ones. Look at sports like tennis or golf.
Right.
Success there is often a linear function of parental income. The best coaches, the club access, the time, all of that buys a huge head start.
But other endeavors are impervious to that.
Which is why the comparison to track and field, specifically distance running, is so illuminating. You can buy the best shoes, the best nutrition, but you can't buy a head start in lung capacity. You can't buy the millions of miles required to succeed.
Class and income just don't buy the necessary time or physical discomfort.
No. Success is earned through symmetrical, brutal effort, no matter what's in your bank account.
So, what does this all mean for us? We've looked at the state's strange focus on the optics of death, preferring quiet cruelty to visible suffering, and how asymmetrical influence shapes everything from drug epidemics to our own psychology.
And the overriding theme is that optics and convenience so often trump reality and facts, which connects right back to the inherent asymmetry between story and fact.
Facts are easy to dismiss.
So easy. But stories, especially ones that betray your expectations, they elicit deep emotion. They anchor ideas. They are powerful agents of contagion for good and for ill.
A good story doesn't just inform you, it convinces you.
That betrayal of expectation is one of the few places where people are willing to fundamentally change their minds, which is why the super spreaders of ideology almost always rely on narrative, not just data. We saw how massive asymmetry can be ruthlessly exploited, whether it's lethal injection hiding suffering or Purdue Pharma targeting a tiny fraction of doctors. And we just talked about how success in some sports is predictable by wealth, while others, like running, require unpurchasable effort.
So, given the increasing power and transparency of asymmetry in this digital age where super spreaders are easier than ever to find and leverage, what other areas of modern life outside of competitive sports remain truly impervious to a head start bought by wealth or access? And why haven't they become asymmetrical yet? Something for you to chew on as you move through your day.
Until next time.